Welcome to episode 4 of From the Be All End. I'm Simon Evans, and with me is Andrew Greaves, Chris Bowden, Justin Connolly, and Paul Woodhouse. And there's a lot been going on in Claret's world over the last week or so. So let's dive straight into it. Fixture list out was the big item of the last week, really. Manchester City at home to start with. What do we think about that? Chris, is that a good start, good time to play them, or the worst possible?
I don't think there's ever a good time to play Manchester City, if the truth be told. I was watching a debate on social media today saying how many, where would City finish if they played the entire season with 8 men? And one of the pundits was trying to say, yeah, they'll be fine, they'll stay up. And yeah, you tend to agree with him. But no, it's if you're going to play City, I suppose, we're now just over a week, 10 days since they've been crowned European champions and they won the treble. I think Jack Grealish has tweeted today he's off for 4 weeks. It's maybe they're not going to hit the rhythm, hit the groove quite as early, and they have had a couple of sticky results early in the season. In the past few years, but it doesn't matter. Who plays for them, what system they play. They're just a nightmare, aren't they? But results have been closer at home than they have been at the Etihad. And let's see, if they lose Kyle Walker, it looks like he's maybe off to Bayern Munich. We don't know where Gundogan's off. There might be, Bernardo Silva might be off, and you never know. It might be a newish City side we're facing. So who do you say? You've got to play them twice, haven't you? At some stage.
I mean, for the media, for Sky, it's a dream, really, isn't it? Because they can build up that whole narrative all week about Vincent Kompany's first game in charge in the Premier League, being against the maestro Pep Guardiola, who taught him everything he knows and all that kind of stuff. But it can also set a tone, though, can't it? If we get, if we get 7 put past us. Justin, what's your thoughts on that start to the season?
Do you know what? I find it very difficult to get worked up about the fixtures. It's not like
Try.
it's not like it's a cup competition where you don't quite know who you're going to play. We've got the list of the 19 other sides in the division, and we've got to play them all twice. I suppose on balance, it's probably better to play them earlier in the season before they hit the stride, especially if they're going to have some changes in personnel over the summer. It seems like a couple of the key midfielders might leave the club. But, the same could be said in the middle of the season. They might get injuries, they might get, suspensions or whatever. I just think Kompany would say it doesn't really matter, wouldn't he? He would say, we've got to play them all twice. Just bring it on.
Greavesy, we're looking at the rest of the fixtures list. Anything jump out there? There's Liverpool on Boxing Day, which is it's nice to have a Northwest rival of some sort to play at Christmas. But anything else catching your eye on when you look through that list?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen, but Luton away, second game of the season. I know I think they've requested certain amount of grace period because they're having obviously changes at Kenilworth Road. So whether that kind of goes ahead, but that's quite a nice early away fixture. It's probably quite a nice home fixture from their point of view as well. It's probably a good time for one of the promoted clubs to get points on the board. And then I think after, is it Chelsea early October, we've got a bit of you don't want to call it a decent run because there's no such thing as a decent run in the Premier League, but you've got a decent run of fixtures there taking us up to that Christmas period or kind of early December period. So I think the fixtures the ebb and flow of the fixtures feels a bit more kind of a bit fairer, the distribution of fixtures. As everyone said, you've got to play everyone twice, home and away. And the running doesn't look too bad at the start of the season. It could be that there's a couple of shocks in there. It could be that actually some of the clubs we expect to be struggling don't struggle. Obviously, Bournemouth have potted their manager this week, got another manager in pretty quickly. Lots of things will happen, I think, over the next few weeks. We don't know who's signing who. It's quite quiet at the minute. We don't know which other managers are perhaps going to be shifted. We don't know who's going to be Palace manager. So there's lots of kind of movable parts at the minute. So, but yeah, I think certainly that running we'd be relatively happy with. The start to season, I think, 4 of the first 6 games at home. Not ideal getting home games out the way early doors, but as Justin alluded to, I think company would absolutely take that fixture list all day long.
Woody, I know you were amused when JJ Watt posted on our fixture list and suggested he'd be in the away end at Kenilworth Road with ordering a takeaway hot pot. I think that.
Don't start me off, Simon. Yeah, bless him. He won't get a takeaway hot pot from Kenilworth Road, though, will he? But no, we have that weird, bizarre stat, don't we, about first game against champions. The Leicesters of this world, Chelsea, etc., City, United. So basically, we're going to piss it. It's tied on. At least a sneaky little 1-0, and I'll take it because I do agree that it's probably a very good time to play them.
Yeah, I tend to think it is. Teams aren't into their stride yet, and especially teams with international players as well who do like to make the most of their international breaks. They've not had many, have they, with the World Cup? They'll be getting a proper rest in, and then they come back, and they're not going to be at the peak. But will we? We'll talk about that later on. What kind of Burnley team it's going to be that lines up against Manchester City? And the other issue, of course, to move on to is tickets, because there's a new membership scheme been brought in at Turf Moor, which has caused a little bit of confusion and debate, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So yeah, a new membership scheme. I've got to say, when I looked at the details that came out from the club, I really was scratching my head, didn't understand. I mean, from a communications point of view, I couldn't tell immediately the difference between the premium level and the ultra premium, and the member and the premium member and international member. All this stuff. There's been a lot of toing and throwing. Fans really shouldn't have to do this, contacting the club and posting on message boards what they've heard from someone in the club shop or whatever about how it's all working. But Greavesy, I know you've had a look at this, and things seem to have evolved since that initial announcement. So what is this system then?
Yeah, so we've got a new membership scheme which gets you closer to the Clarets. It's kind of the two levels, 35 quid for those who want to have a chance, a very slim chance of ever getting home tickets. And then the more controversial one is a premium membership, which is 250 quid. And for that, you basically, on the surface, get to the front of the queue when it comes to away tickets. Now, as you say, the communication was absolutely dreadful from the club. It just sent out a couple of, JPEG pictures on the website to try and kind of trumpet what this brilliant membership scheme was all about. They've now since done an FAQ where they've clarified that actually the away ticket, they're going to basically shave off 5% of any away ticket allocation and make that available to members. It also says they're going to limit the number of memberships available at that premium level to make sure that, I guess, them premium members who are, paying 250 quid at least have a chance of getting some away tickets over the course of the season. Now, 5% is not a lot, and it probably won't make a huge difference for the big games like at Old Trafford, the Etihad, Arsenal, etc. But some of those games which, people who go to every single away game will want to go to, your likes of Luton, your likes of Brentford, your likes of Crystal Palace, perhaps, where you get smaller allocations. That's where, literally years and years of loyalty points that you build up, 6,000 loyalty points, which is the kind of first rung of the ladder to get onto, to get these away tickets. That looks like it all counts for nothing now, just because the club's chasing a limited number of 250 quid. Now, if you and Woody in America wanted to be a premium member, we have got some delightful perks for you. You not only get a reserve table in the fan zone if you are ever on these shows and lucky enough to get a home ticket, and we don't know the price of home tickets, but you also get a group online call with a Burnley player. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing which youth team are they put up to kind of fulfill that particular obligation. So yeah, I think it's just when a lot of the stuff coming out of the club feels like it's gone a lot more professional, if that's how we measure things in LED screens and the way hospitality seats look and things like that. there's still that tendency to put the foot in it and score own goals, isn't there? And it all comes down to that communication. Now, we all work within communication-related industries, and I think, if we're scratching our heads as so-called professionals, then people asking on, up the Clarets message board, I'm a season ticket holder. Do I need one of these memberships as well to get me away tickets?
Well, that's
What
the
does it
point.
mean and things like that?
Do they need it? If you're a season ticket holder, that 5%, is
Well,
that capping the queue jumping 250 quid is at 5%, or is
yes, it is. Yeah. So basically, 5% of all away tickets will be saved just for the premium members. Now they're allowed to buy 2 tickets. So if you club together with a mate, your premium membership is really only 125 quid. So for 125 quid, you essentially get to the front of the queue, regardless of how many points you've built up, regardless of whether you've spent double, triple, 3 times that on a season ticket. You're at the front of the queue, and the chances are you will, if the club are going to limit the amount of memberships, you'll get away tickets.
Justin, there was something about that statement that got your goat a little bit, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was actually. I mean, when they put the news out that this membership scheme was going to be starting, one of the quotes in it, which I'm going to give to you now, was really, really quite annoyed me. And this is it. I'm gonna give it to you word for word. We wanted to offer all our fans the opportunity to become a Claret and get closer to the club. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been a Claret since the day I was born, and I've never had to pay for it up to now. And I think that kind of wording is really symbolic of the kind of tone deafness of this whole thing, trying to squeeze a bit of cash out of the fans at a time when obviously we're not rolling in it. Nobody's rolling in it unless you're the chief executive of some energy company. So I understand, of course, that the club needs to explore, all the different avenues it can to try and generate some more cash. But this just seems a little bit tone deaf, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and it's actually probably not a lot of money either. It's a lot of money for the fans, but it's not a lot of revenue for the club when you look at how many people would actually be paying that 250 quid. Chris?
Yeah, I'm obviously in a bit of a bizarre situation, really. I mean, I finished at the end of August last year, and technically still had a data code pass to the end of the season, and I didn't use it once. I'm not taking the mickey. I don't work in the in the newspaper industry anymore, and I paid to go on when I can, and it was difficult enough to get tickets last season without sort of the added complication of memberships and I just feel that first and foremost the club have to look after that hardcore, like Greavesy said, the ones that are going to be at Crystal Palace on a freezing cold Tuesday night, and the ones that come thick or thin, they're there every game away from home, and they must be looked after. I don't care about high profile, luxurious diamond membership, this, that, and the other. You look after those who've grafted and got the points over year upon year, and you can't put their noses out of joint.
Apart from anything else, that if we're talking about only 5% of the away tickets, at tops that's going to be 5% of 3,000, is it? Am I right there?
Something like
that.
Yeah.
It's only 250. It's only 150 tickets, isn't it? So, they're not exactly going to be coining it in on this membership scheme if all they've got is 150 tickets to sell, are they?
No, that's what I don't get about it. You're rubbing people up the wrong way by effectively incentivizing people to jump the queue, which people don't. No one likes a queue jumper, and you're doing that, and you're annoying the people who've got loyalty points that are called loyalty points for a reason. They're your most loyal fans who've travelled, as Chris said, home and away to all kinds of unpleasant fixtures, and then could miss out on the big ones. Yeah. For very little in terms of revenue. And they don't seem to be making a brilliant job of bringing in revenue from elsewhere either, really. I think we should...
It's annoying other people as well, isn't it? Even if you pay that 250 quid, if there's only 150 tickets available, if they get 200 people buying that top tier, you've got 50 people who aren't going to. Well, each one of them is able to buy 2 tickets.
So you've only got 75 people.
It just seems like such a weird. Yeah, it's just such a weird.
It's a strange hill to die on, isn't it?
It sounds like something somebody came up with at a meeting and said, "Hey, you know what we could do?" And then it's gone away and been brought in as a policy without anyone really thinking through the issues like we just discussed there. I mean, Woody, as an international claret, and we know that amongst our vast audience for this podcast, there are many Burnley fans in your situation in North America and elsewhere around the world. Hello to our Australian listeners as well. Woody, does the international membership and that possibility of a fan zone reserved seat or table or garden chair appeal to you?
Table, yeah. Strangely enough, no. And you know how I looked for the positive in everything, Simon.
You are.
But it just seems like everybody else has said, it seems like I cannot work out what it is that they're necessarily trying to do. You know, where does it compare and contrast versus, you know, other more established Premier League membership schemes, etc. I saw something about Aston Villa, etc., and it just isn't as ridiculously expensive. I don't see anybody trying to like throw 250 quid out there for, you know, international folks who were just going to get a picnic seat, you know, and a chat with Costello if you're lucky, you know, and and you know, as an international fan, it's relatively cheap to watch Burnley, especially in the US. We can watch home and away via Peacock for $49 a year, you know. So this idea of throwing money around left, right, and centre just for the privilege of like sitting somewhere near Turf Moor seems a little bit odd, you know.
I think it would actually work out cheaper for me to get on a plane from Fort Lauderdale up to Cleveland. You provide the fan zone in your backyard.
and the picnic table. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then we just need Chris to weave his contacts at the club to provide us with a virtual interview with Dario Costello or Ethan Riley or yeah.
Are you getting those names wrong on purpose, Simon?
I wouldn't mind, but he's reading them off.
Russell one them up. We can get Hafner's pies to sort you out a hot pot, and we can ping that over by FedEx, and then you've got the whole shebang. Then, haven't you? You've got the JJ Watt experience in your own backyard in Cleveland.
Yeah,
I'm saving my 250 quid, and I'm coming over there myself.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think if there's a thrown in being able to like raise the championship trophy on top of a bus while wearing a retro Clarets training top, I might have been tempted by that one. Right?
Do they throw any merch in? I'm just wondering. I know some of the other clubs, but when
there's a membership pack, which I imagine is some of the leftover hospitality gifts from last season, which, from my experience, have included travel coffee mug, a rather fetching card holder, several pin badges.
Claret and blue cheese.
Font. I imagine you get that.
Do you still get claret and blue cheese?
Yeah, you do still get the little truckle trunk or whatever it's called, a cheese.
Yeah, I remember, we used to get a decent little pack with junior. Who was in junior Clarets? I was in junior Clarets. Used to get a little badge, I think.
I was in Tufty Club.
Yeah. Well, there is a Junior Clarets membership, of course, where you get a chance to be a mascot. So maybe you and Woody can club together for a Junior Clarets membership.
We already have. Yeah.
One of those stag do's. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Well, the stag do's where people have paid for their mate to go out as mascots at one of these games. It's just absolutely bizarre, isn't it? It's a full-grown man in full kit.
Yeah. A mate of mine, we actually, the Vintage Clarets allowed him to be mascot. He's a massive Roger Eli fan. It was actually last week's guest, Roger Eli, who sorted it out, and my mate Benny went and was the mascot for Vintage Clarets match against Belvedere in a very ironic way. But yeah, fully grown. I think he was probably mid-30s at that point. Full kit wanker, going out and having a kick about.
There's all sorts of things you could pay for extra, isn't there? Yeah. Well, I think overall we're probably giving that the thumbs down, aren't we? This membership scheme. We're all Clarets without being members. Right. Let's move on. So, the risk of turning this podcast into a total whinge-a-thon, we've got something else new that's come along. I don't know. I think we might have more divided opinion on this. The new club badge, or the new version of the club badge, claret and white monochrome crest. I'm interested in our opinions on this one. Let's start off with you, Woody. What were your thoughts on it?
Fucking shit, isn't it? Really, you know. No, it's like it looks to me like somebody hasn't necessarily put the necessary thought in for a monochromatic when you only need 3 colours to run at. To be fair, and it's like a really bad car decal. Did you see that? Even the Sun's picked up on it, like one of those Twitter conversation kind of articles with all these people going, "Oh, it's crap, it's shit." And yeah, it's not great, and it doesn't pop. And I mean, Justin is a designer of the graphic variety, and I'm sure he'll concur.
Just your graphic opinion.
Well, funnily enough, I don't mind it. I have to say, I think it's I think it's an improvement on what went before it. That multicoloured logo that looked like the sort of thing that somebody had knocked together at the last minute in Microsoft Paint. I can't say that I absolutely love it, but I think I have noticed over the last few years the sort of design chops at the club, if you will, seem to have improved. I think there's somebody there who definitely knows what they're doing. You can see it like in the program and stuff like that. And this, I think, is a bit of an extension of that. It's a real sort of simplification of that mark, isn't it? Which immediately solves quite a lot of design problems about where you can and can't use it. And also, it's not actually that new, is it? We have used that sort of single colour logo before in various places. In fact, I think I'm right in saying on both the away shirts last season, they weren't white, but they were that single colour. So, I mean, I don't love it. I can't say that I love it, but I don't mind it. And I think it's an improvement on what we had. If we were going to go for a single colour logo, if it was up to me, we'd be using that BFC logo that's on the front of what they call the manager's cap.
Oh, yes.
The one from the 70s, the one
Absolutely.
that was on the V shirt. I love that. I'd love to see that make a comeback on a shirt one day.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% behind that one. I think Woody's criticism that it doesn't pop. You certainly notice that when you look at like when the Premier League put out those infographics with all the teams' logos on. You see something like Notts Forest that does pop, and then you see Burnley's that most people are going to be looking at it going, "What's that? Who is it?"
Yeah, it is quite small, isn't it? So it's kind of when they use it at a smaller size, it kind of just sort of all looks like a bit of a blob, doesn't it? But
exactly, it's busy. It's too busy.
It's the modern trend, isn't it? Everyone wants this. So they want simplicity, and seem to want this tonal effect. It's all over the training gear, and it's like I say that you get a lot of people pining for the badge that was sort of worn from the early '80s to the 2009.
The town crest, really, isn't it?
That crest, but. Well, I mean, this is the town crest, isn't it? To all intents and purposes. But it's I'm adjusting. I like the old classic BFC. I think Dundee United had. I think they brought it back very recently on one of their strips, and it looked absolutely fabulous. But let's say we, especially with Umbro as well. You can go back down through the historical kits and pick out an Umbro with the BFC embroidery, and maybe we bring back.
Come on, bring the V back.
I think we've got a campaign there. I think we can have a podcast campaign to bring back the V, because the only issue would be the sponsors writing would mess it up a bit, wouldn't it? Because it's right slap bang. So you might need to make the V a bit smaller, but it would look cool with that BFC logo in the middle of it again as well. Greavesy, you're the young lad on this podcast. Are you sharing our nostalgia for the V and the old BFC badge, or do you like this new one?
No, 100%. I love the V shirt. I had a kind of Toffs version of that V shirt back in the day, and I think you can now get a version. Score draw, I think do a version, I think. But yeah, again, as Justy said, that BFC logo that's on company's cap is just incredible. If you're going to go for something, have that. You know, you don't need a shield around the town crest, and you know, as you know, both Woody and Justin said, it's very busy. It's busy to put in a shield if it's just in white kind of thing. So yeah, I'd be all in favour of a from the be all end campaign to bring back the V, and I think this is going to be the last year we perhaps could even do that, because I think we're ditching Umbro at the end of this season for pastures new, and there's talk of Castori, I think it is, who do Newcastle, Rangers, and plenty of others.
Don't forget Genoa.
But there is some good kits out there, and Genoa. There's some good kits out there. I don't know if you saw the Southampton Hummel kit, which is a version of the kit from the 80s. I'd love a, almost kind of. I think Villa had a Hummel kit, didn't they, in the 80s as well?
Have you seen that Denmark wore? Denmark wore the. Denmark wore the 86.
Of course, yeah, the 88 to 92. Yeah, the I'd love a claret and blue version, like the Villa, a Hummel claret and blue, old logo, BFC logo in gold. Happy days. Let's do away with this new quest.
That was like a half and half. It's like, yeah. Would you? Can I say they've still got the quartered shirt in the club shop, haven't they? The old, when Adrian Heath and Chris Waddle was manager. Yeah. It's a Hummel version would be like a half.
Not wearing halves. I don't know. Not wearing halves.
You won't be able to get
no,
that.
Definitely not.
You can't.
Only one club wear halves.
The quarters was bad enough, wasn't it? With some.
I remember ringing Radio Lancashire to whinge about the Adidas kit, the quarter kit, and getting very irate, and Gary Hickson trying to calm me down as like an 11 or 12-year-old. I've always been a bit of a whinging.
Well, there was
expletive there.
Chris Waddle had a Q&A with some fans. This is like 97, just when they were really, really struggling. They barely scored a goal. They won a game. And that was the famous night when Glenn Rowe had told one of the fans, he said, he'd said, someone had asked where was Glenn Litton, and he'd said, well, he's at home watching EastEnders. He's not fit to lace Chrissy's boots. But one of the questions that night was about the kit. It's like Chris Waddle just threw his hands up, and he's like, right, I can do. I'm trying to do what I can do on the pitch. Never mind, like with a strip.
They do get people wound up though. They do.
That wasn't me, incidentally. But kits do, don't they? Kits and crests is what we like to whinge about. If we can't whinge about us not spending money on players, then we'll whinge about kits and crests. But yeah, I just think I agree. It's just wishy-washy. Not for me. I like what Villa have done with theirs. I keep seeing a version of Villa's, which is the old circle badge from when they won the European Cup. And I think, again, just, as Chris said, there's a trend towards more retro and things like that. That Villa crest for me is really good. I'm glad we've not gone down the circular route, but this new iteration for me is just,
The thing is as well, they always talk about brand consistency, don't they, the marketing people, and how it should, and I think that's what this is an attempt to be, like consistent across. But then every time Vincent Kompany does an interview, he's got a hat on with the retro badge on, which everybody, we all want to see that badge come back.
And JJ Watt likes it too, doesn't he?
JJ Watt even wears a retro tracksuit top, doesn't he? So I like the retro stuff that goes in the club shop. They're doing a good job with that, but why not incorporate that into the whole thing? Yeah. Right. Have we whinged enough now about badges and membership schemes and all that kind of stuff? Obviously, I think that there are interesting things on the horizon, and let's talk about them and some of the new faces we might be seeing at Turf Moor in a moment. So yeah, no new faces through the door yet. We've had some players leaving, plenty of rumours. We still haven't got the loan deal situation sorted out for several players. Obviously, Jordan Bayer we did get sorted out very early on, and also Michael Obafemi. But since the window's opened in earnest, we haven't seen those deals be done. There has been a report that Martson, that we bid 15 million. That was quite widely reported, and that Chelsea wanted 20 million for him. Woody, would you pay 20 million for a left back with that kind of club now?
Probably not. as it seems on the higher end, doesn't it? 20 million, and we seem to have this nervous figure that 15 million with add-ons seems to be our kind of top ceiling for any player currently. And I don't know with Martson, he's a good player, but we also how defensively frail at times he seemed to be, and that would probably get exposed infinitely more, obviously in the Premier League. So no, it seems like a lot. It seems like a lot, especially when you've got people like Sergio Gomez floating around for more around the 10 million mark. So there may be other options that are better or cheaper.
Justin, your thoughts? You're a Martson fan, aren't you?
I am a Matson fan. I do. I think if we don't buy him, we need somebody at left back, don't we? And I don't. It's difficult to say whether 20 million is too much. I think it depends a lot on what the actual overall budget is. If that's like 30% of what we've got to spend, then clearly we're going to have to think again, because I think we probably need more than 3 players, don't we? We need reinforcements in the areas where the lone players have left and maybe are not coming back, and we need to strengthen elsewhere as well, up front and in midfield. So if it's a big chunk of the cash we've got to spend, then I think I would be looking elsewhere as well, to be honest.
I mean, Chris, the 15 million has been that number. Woody's right, hasn't he? That seems to have been where Burnley over the last few years have been like, that's as far as we're going to go, is 15. Do we have to break through that this window, really, if we want to sign people like Teller and some of the players we're being linked with? Do we have to start signing 20 million players this summer?
Probably that window has to go. I mean, last summer's window, I know there's much mirth, really, as a lot of people say, "Oh, Burnley bought the Championship," and some rather ironic coming from supporters of a certain football club down the road who invented the whole thing. But it's last summer Burnley spent more money than they've ever spent in a summer transfer window. More than any of the years in the Premier League, and obviously that it was half of what they brought into the club, but they're going to have. I think 30 million pounds the most is spent in a summer window. It's got to be more than that. Simple. But if you're talking, the Chelsea wanted 20 for Martson. We've heard that Southampton want 15 million upwards for Teller. Bart Verbruggen from Anderlecht looks to be destined for Brighton for 20 million quid. It's ballpark for talented young European footballer these days, isn't it? And it's, unless you can box clever, it's got to be able to say Vincent showed last summer, to be able to pick up players that he's sort of that have caught his eye in Belgium, picked them up for buttons, really. Players like like Benson and I think people like that. And, Bayer, we forget that Bayer's already 15 million euro to make that permanent.
Yeah.
So a lot of money for Burnley Football Club already spent, and people won't even. I see people. There's still some people weeping and wailing that they haven't brought anyone, and the window's been open like less than a week, and people forget Bayer's already through the door. So we'll see. I'd say the Nathan Redmond link that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago has sort of come up again in Turkey today. With would you bring Redmond in at 29 on a free rather than Teller, who's unproven in the Premier League?
I think I heard that transfer link first on this podcast. I think. Oh, you might be underselling that, Chris. That was a Chris Borden from the BO end, world exclusive. That's turning out to look like it's got legs. So don't need to be modest, Chris. Come on. I mean, I think I like Redmond.
My Turkish friends.
Extensive contacts. Yeah. I mean, I think Redmond would be a good signing, but as a sort of addition to the squad, not necessarily as like. I'd rather have Teller, But I mean, money wise, Andrew. I mean, in terms of if we are saying that we need to bring in 5 or 6 players, including the loan players, and we are looking now at players who are going to cost 15 to 20 million, we're talking there about going well over 60 million in a window, aren't we? Is that realistic for the club, even with the different approach to financing that we now have?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that is it. I was saying to somebody the other day, I can foresee us spending, on paper, because it's always on paper, isn't it? It's never kind of, it's half the time you don't pay the full transfer fees because there's, clauses and all that kind of thing, and add-ons. Sometimes you pay a bit more, sometimes you pay more when you sell them. But I can see us spending 80, 90 million because, like you say, combined Bayer and Obafemi, that you're 15 million quid deep there, aren't you? If you think 3 million quid for Michael Obafemi, which is cheaper than we were quoted last summer, 15 million euros, which is God knows what in today's post-Brexit climate for Bayer. But yeah, absolutely. I think we get the Teller deal done, and it rises to 15 million. I'm not sure. I agree with Woody. I'm not sure I'd go for Maatsen at that price, but if Chelsea can meet us halfway, then absolutely you'd have him. Chris mentioned Redmond. Absolutely, you'd take Redmond, because if you can get a season out of him like we got out of Goodmanson, for instance, so he changes the way he plays to fit the company system. Absolutely, I think he's a great, experienced Premier League link. But I mean, I've lost count of the amount of players where we've been linked with. I mean, there's Tresor from Belgium, the replacement goalkeeper who won the Belgian league, the French lad, instead of Verbruggen. But again, he'll come in at half the cost of Verbruggen, still spending 10 million quid on a keeper, perhaps. These are gone are the days when we were kind of waiting for, Lansbury and Driver and the likes to appear in Paddy and Chippy. We're actually fishing in ponds which lots of people have been fishing in for years, whereas we had very strict kind of, Dale Stevens. I mean, remember the summer when we just got Dale Stevens? Remember the summer when we got Will Norris? We're fishing in different ponds now. And that is what we want. It shows a level of ambition, and we will miss out on players because other teams will go higher, like Brighton have for Verbruggen. But we've clearly got a limit that what company thinks Verbruggen is worth, and it will be a shame if we miss out because we've been tracking him for so long. But that's life in this level, if you will.
I think Verbruggen does show the benefit, though, of, like you were saying before, Chris, that we were interested in him last year and very maybe close to getting him last year. And sometimes you've just got to pull the trigger and pay a little bit more for that player that you really value, then because a year later he can be worth 3 times that amount.
Well, see, literally could have got him for a quarter of the price last summer, Verbruggen. Yalaten Ruvelar, the goalkeeping coach who came to Burnley with Vincent, took him to Anderlecht from NAC Breda, and again we're talking about with Verbruggen, it's clear to see he's going to have a very high ceiling, and I'm saying I've surprised Manchester United. His attributes are what Manchester United need to replace David De Gea with, and it would make perfect sense for them to jump in. But we'll see. But talking about fishing in ponds that you're familiar with, I was interested to see our friend Wout linked with Everton. I think it'd be an ideal solution for everyone. That's it. Talking to a couple of reporters in Turkey that they weren't enamoured with the way he left Besiktas. He sort of made no one was going to stand
bridges there, did he?
Yeah, well, no one's going to stand in his way to go to Manchester United. But it was a fait accompli. He sort of basically walked out and he down tools and I'm off. It's a done deal before anything had been signed and sealed. But I could Everton are short of a few quid. You like to think if Burnley can pick up 10 million quid for him, maybe Sean's seen something. He can get more out of him than he got out of out of him at Burnley. But for the first 4 games, he looked a proper player, didn't he? Dropping deep, he could carry the ball.
He did, to be fair, yeah.
But after that, dear me, yeah. and subsequently, bar a 15-minute window for Holland against Argentina, I think we've not seen anything, have we?
That's quite a window, that though, isn't it? Yeah,
it's well, you give your IT for a window like that in your football career, wouldn't you? But
it's interesting though that he's kind of the only one we're talking about outgoing, isn't it? I mean, quite a lot of our players had great seasons last season, and I would have expected a little bit more speculation and interest in some of the star performers who we actually signed rather than the loan players, But I can't believe no one is being linked with Zaroury, for example, because he's clearly the real deal, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
There were links, weren't there? But there's nothing sort of seems to have come of any substance. I think there's Juventus and Dortmund were there was speculation. I think Benson had similar, didn't he? But you say no one's come knocking on the door officially, it would seem. But
there's an interesting aspect to all of this, which is a bit broader than Burnley, but it's probably worth touching on briefly. I was talking to somebody who's worked in and around Premier League clubs for a while, who was saying that, there's been so much attention and focus on data in transfers and everyone analysing the data and how the value of players is linked to how much data there is about them in top leagues or in relevant leagues. And so their prices are going up with that information, and saying that really the gains you can get and the advantage you can get if you don't have a lot of money isn't in technology and data, but it's the exact opposite. It's if you can go and watch a young player playing his third or fourth game for a team in Belgium or somewhere and go, you've got a scout who really knows his stuff, all the old school techniques that scouts use, who's got an eye for a footballer, who goes, that lad's a footballer, get him now. How much can we get him for? 2 million, get him now, before there's any data on him and everyone else in the world can scout him. I mean, that's probably what we've been doing, right? I mean, that's probably what we've been doing. I don't think we signed some of these players from Belgium if they haven't been seen by either company or some of his scouts. And it's not the data there. It's the fact that they've looked at them and said they're a good player. It's an interesting one. I think there's still a value there, and we still are going to be looking at value because the club's finances aren't as such that we can casually spend 100 million in a window like Arsenal are about to do and other clubs do. So talking of finances, this week there's been more information come out about ALK Capital and how they are financing the running of the club. It's always a complicated one. We always say that we're not accountants, so we'll get that out of the way now. None of us are accountants. None of us are financiers. But it does look like, Andrew, you've had a look at this, I think. It does look like Burnley have taken out another big loan to cover the previous loan, or is that a fair way of describing it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a couple of things posted at Companies House, charges, which are essentially, I guess you'd kind of call them securities. So, when you borrow big amounts of money from banks, then you kind of put up a surety or a security. And it looks like the club. There was lots of talk of the MSD loan, which is the Michael Dell of Dell Computers loan, being paid off back in November, and that the club had refinanced that with a loan from the Australian bank. Is it Macquarie? I think they're called the Australian bank, who have lots of football clubs on their books, shall we say? And for all intents and purposes, we're told that this loan has been refinanced at around half the interest rate, which, given the way kind of mortgage rates have hit this week and things, then it's probably a shrewd move from the club to kind of shift that loan onto another one. But there's also this kind of talk in terms of whether it's the securities, the charges that have appear to suggest that what the club have actually done is taken out a credit facility with Macquarie Bank, with this Australian lender, which they've guaranteed against Turf Moor, against Gawthorpe, against the Sports Barn, which is where you and Woody will be.
Is that new that they're guaranteeing loans against the turf?
Yeah, and I don't think it's that unusual. I think it's that and future TV money, I think up until January 2025 is the kind of guarantee. And of course, it doesn't mean to say that the lender will kind of snatch the club land assets away from the club. It's just if we can't pay the money, then we might be in a little bit of trouble. As I understand it, like I say, not an accountant, but yeah, it's interesting that it's come at this time when we perhaps have set up maybe 100 million quid or whatever it is, 60 million quid's worth of loan stroke lending facilities with a bank as we're hitting transfer season. As with anything, you don't really ever find out how much this stuff costs until the accounts come out in another 12 months' time. And even then, I think it'll only be a partial picture given how late we were filing the accounts for this season. The after the accounts section on the club accounts, touched on some of the stuff that had happened, but not a lot. We talked about JJ Watt's investment being more from a marketing point of view than a hard cash point of view. But I just wonder whether the club are hoping that JJ Watt's involvement and a good start in the Premier League season might suddenly bring investors to the table, which again will mean that Alan Pace and co perhaps don't have to part with any of their own hard-earned in order to kind of fund this ongoing journey. Lots of people suggesting, again, shout out to kind of Chester Perry, Paul Warne, and others on Up the Clarets. I think they do a really good job of trying to explain a lot of his speculation, because they're trying to, they're trying to work with both hands tied behind the backs because it's not transparent. But yeah, interesting times in terms of the finances and what it might mean for what we can do this summer.
What do you make of it all, Justin? I must admit, I don't really. I mean, once we went into that huge debt that we'd never been into before, we were obviously looking at a completely different situation from the, never mind the Frank Teasdale we can have a kitty days, but the Kilby Garlic era of running a tight ship and keeping spending under control and so on. We were obviously into an era of. Does it change things significantly if we're taking out yet more loans to cover transfers?
Yeah, we don't have the details, do we? But you can't these days. You can't run a football club like that and expect to be successful. You just have to take the risks, don't you? I mean, the kind of money we're talking about spending now is far removed from the £1 million we were spending on Dale Stevens that summer a few years ago.
He's destined his poor Dale Stevens to be a reference point for the rest of it.
And look what happened after that. 2 years later we got relegated because we haven't invested in the club enough, and people were complaining about it. Now we are investing in the club, and in players, in the playing staff, and we're spending quite a lot of money, or it looks like we might be spending quite a lot of money. We certainly spent a lot last summer, but we also have to remember that these players are assets, aren't they? We're not spending, whatever it is we spend on Nathan Teller or whatever it is we spend on Ian Matson or whoever comes in this summer. And then that money's gone. It's invested in those players who have the potential to be sold on for perhaps even bigger fees. If you look at players like Zaruri and Benson, who we spent, we gambled, on them. We spent, I don't know the exact sums. I don't think anybody does, but I remember we spent 3 million or so on each of those two. Now they're now worth more than that, aren't they? So that's what it's all about, isn't it? Burnley has become a club, or is trying to become a club that invests in these young players, coaches them, brings them on, has success with them, and then they've got to sell them on to bigger clubs and then reinvest that cash. And I think we're just at the start of that journey. So it's a risk, isn't it? It is a risk, but you don't get anywhere in football without taking risks. Well, in fact, we know where you get, if you don't take those risks, and that is back down into the Championship.
Yeah, I do view it differently to how I viewed the leverage takeover thing, because that was a particular technique which, and this is an interesting one that came out last week, isn't it? That the Premier League actually voted unanimously, i.e. with the vote of Alan Pace's Burnley, to outlaw 100% leveraged takeovers, which was an interesting one. But this is a different issue from that, isn't it? I mean, this is investing in players and generating revenue to be able to compete in the Premier League. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of From the Be All End. We'll be back soon with another one for you as we start the build-up towards this new season, and hopefully have plenty of new signings in the coming weeks to talk about as well. Please do let your friends know about us. Subscribe to us on your favourite podcast platforms. If we're not on those platforms, let us know and we'll see what we can do about fixing that. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Beehole Podcast. It's the same name on Facebook as well, Beehole Podcast. Follow us on there. Tell your friends about us. Let everyone know. And we'll speak to you again soon.